Bill, tell me a bit about your first impressions of the UK.
I arrived in London with my wife in the late 1980s, and obviously our first problem was to find a place to stay. For a while we stayed with a Polish landlady who worked for the British Museum. She was about to be married to Mr. Black, a gentleman of very useful contacts in varied spheres of life. She was looking for a bigger property for herself and her future husband. She kept careful records of what she had seen and what the potential of property was. She knew so much about it that one could think that she was working for some company which dealt with buying and selling houses. She found a couple of houses which she and Mr. Black thought had great potential and which were within our price range. They were also in a nice area and the right size for us. At her suggestion, we looked at these properties to get the feel of the market. I think it would have taken us a long time to find something suitable that we could afford. You know, I think we really landed on our feet when we stayed with her.
So you found a more permanent place to stay after that?
Well, we set off to see one of the houses our landlady had suggested. It was near York. What a wonderful address. The house was run down, though, so no building society would lend us any money to buy it. But after a while, I found a local building society which was planning to buy the house for their needs. After some negotiations, they agreed to lend me part of the money, provided that I completely rewired the house, fixed the roof, and made good the wall that was falling down at the back of the house. I couldn't believe it at first, but I had to agree to do it, though because there was no other way I would have been able to get any finance. I suppose I realised, though, that the property had lots of potential and was a good investment, because when we sold it 4 years later, it doubled the value.
Bill, are you much of a handyman yourself? Do you like the store do-it-yourself?
You know, there are times in your life when you just have to grit your teeth and get on with things if you want to succeed. That was one of those moments. I had no money left, so I had to do it all myself, and I didn't have any of the necessary skills for that either. However, I could use my hands and had a basic idea how things were done. For 6 months I would get up early in the morning, cycle to the firm I was working for. After 8 hours of work, I would cycle to the house in York, and I would work like crazy on all the jobs till 1 in the morning. Then I would cycle back home, sleep, and then it would start all over again. 6 months later, the kitchen and the living room were ready, and we were able to move in. At that time, I was covered all over with some unsightly sort of red pimples. It was nervous stress plus overwork, plus probably bad diet or whatever, but I did manage to get this house right. So when we moved in, I felt relieved and happy, although we had to continue the renovation over the next 2 years. Our friends, who felt sorry for us, were willing to help. They said that they'd been worried about us during the heavy building phase particularly.
Bill, you mentioned using your bike a lot. Are you a keen cyclist?
I refused to take public transport in London after a couple of months, although the bus fare was quite reasonable. I was late for work several times in the early days and was still on my probation period, so I decided to avoid the buses altogether. You know, I'm convinced that the bus drivers were not really interested in providing a good service for passengers. So I became a cyclist out of necessity. But to be honest, I do like the freedom it gives me. And if you cycle early in the morning, there's very little traffic to disturb you, or to pollute the air.
You've been here for some time now. So do you feel completely integrated into the British way of life?
I think complete integration can only be a distant aim or objective, if you want it, and I'm not so sure that it's desirable anyway. You know, that to integrate completely would mean that I would have to give up some of my own personality and some of my own ways of doing things. I would have to change things that I've been doing since childhood. I'm not so sure that I want to do that. And anyway, I feel well settled in at work and have good contact with my immediate English neighbours and friends. I speak English well enough to communicate in all social and professional contexts, so language is no longer a barrier. In fact, I think most people find my foreign accent charming, so I wouldn't ever want to lose that.